Welcome to the Parentline podcast, where we discuss the joys and challenges of modern parenting and explore how we as parents can give our children the best start in life.
Hello and welcome to another podcast from Parentline NI. Today I am pleased to welcome Lindsay Robinson. Lindsay is a blogger, writer and speaker. So welcome along, Lindsay.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you here. So today's topic is about maternal mental health. Yeah. Can you maybe, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and also what the topic is?
Okay, well, I'm Lindsay, as you said. I am mum to Ruben, who is 6 and he's in P2.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, and we live here in Belfast. I am a major American country music fan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, you had all that. And I love watching Netflix. The Crown, I've just finished that. I don't know if you've watched that series. Or Madam Secretary.
Oh, I love Madam Secretary. I have to say, I do
yes.
love that.
We're watching that one at a time, so we don't rush through them all. And I am the founder of a movement called Have You Seen That Girl, which is all about maternal mental health, which is what we're talking about here today.
Okay. And when you say maternal mental health, what does that mean?
I suppose the term you might hear when we talk about maternal mental health is perinatal mental health, and that really focuses on the time of conception up until about a year after birth.
Okay.
So antenatally, when you're pregnant, and then postnatally up until the baby is 1. But I guess maternal mental health covers all mums at all ages and all stages, and the realisation that while many mums might struggle antenatally or postnatally, actually mums can struggle in any season actually with their mental health and well-being, and that real encouragement to, one, look after it, but also feel free to talk about it and to get help and support when you need it.
Yeah. And what are the symptoms of maternal mental health issues?
I suppose we kind of use that as a catch-all term, and there's a number of issues or illnesses or conditions that can come into that. So maternal depression or anxiety, issues with birth trauma or particular stresses or strains that have happened around giving birth, maternal OCD, or something called perinatal or purple psychosis, which is a very serious psychiatric illness that can come on very quickly after a mum gives birth and needs inpatient care. But with all those, I suppose, without generalising too much, it's feeling very depressed or weepy or sad for a prolonged period of time, perhaps feeling very irritable or angry, overly tired or unable to enjoy life as you had before, perhaps feeling very negative or guilty about yourself or maybe about how you feel about your baby. Feeling unable to cope, or maybe that feeling of just lost your confidence, lost you in the midst of it all. Avoiding or feeling very hopeless in social situations or settings, and perhaps feeling very anxious. And I think those of us who are parents will realise that every parent worries at some point, and I don't think that matters what age your child is. We worry about them, but by this we mean anxiety that is overwhelming or controlling or completely takes over your day-to-day life or your week-to-week life. And for some mums it can be finding themselves in a really dark and hopeless place as well. So I guess it depends on the level of severity of how you're struggling or when you're struggling, and perhaps whether it is more focused on the depression end or anxiety, or maybe something, as we've said, to do with birth or birth trauma.
Yeah. So I guess it can be, so it's as individual as the person experiencing it.
Yes. So some of those are maybe common symptoms and they can overlap obviously, but it is very much an individual issue, and the symptoms can vary, but those are, I suppose, some things to look out for and to be aware of, particularly if you're pregnant or a new mum, or if you're a mum or dad at any stage of your parenting journey.
So how would it be detected then? You know, if mummy is feeling all these kinds of things, especially in the early stages of giving birth, how is it ever detected by health professionals?
Well, I suppose antenatally, it could be detected by a midwife or a GP, depending on what care you're in. And antenatally, all mums should be asked about their mental health and well-being and how they're feeling at the midwife checks that they have. And those are an opportunity, obviously, if mum feels that she can, then to share. And again, that's the same postnatally. So midwives, particularly in those first few hours or first few days after birth, should be looking and are looking in many cases just to support mum if that's what they need. Health visitors as well, who do that prolonged visiting after the first few weeks, or again a GP if a mum is back and forth with any other sort of postnatal issues. And generally that it could be via a questionnaire. So you might have seen those questionnaires that they ask about how you're feeling and have you felt this way and when did you feel that way. But I'd say those probably aren't the most important thing. It's about checking in with mum. Have you had any noticeable changes in mood or just in your general well-being that you didn't have before you became a mum? Often mums will know themselves maybe that something isn't quite right, or they're maybe just not feeling as they have before. Or it could be a partner or a friend or family member who just has noticed a change in how mum reacts or her mood or just her general well-being.
Yeah, those questionnaires and health professionals asking about how your mental health is. I mean, when I was looking at your blog, it was only then that I realised that I had been having issues when my first son was born. There seems to be a lot of stigma, and also, when you become a mum, you think, I need to be able to cope with everything that comes along with that. We've made the decision to have a baby and stuff. I'm responsible for this new life. So to admit that there is an issue, I think would be very hard for people to do. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think generally we've worked really hard to try and to work on some of the stigma and the shame that surrounds all sort of mental health issues. But while that is improving, I think particularly for mums and parents, because there's a baby involved, and I suppose because of some of those expectations that we have about motherhood or parenthood and how lovely and romantic and exciting and wonderful it is that we see in magazines and in the media, and therefore we have this expectation of how we should respond and how we will respond. And I also think as women, we're generally very hard on ourselves.
I would agree, yes.
And we don't give ourselves a break. And then so toss becoming a new mum into the mix as well, and a little baby who is completely dependent on you. And straight away you have that mum guilt that I think we all experience, no matter what age we are or when we parent. And that feeling of, I have to get it right, I should get it right, I can't get it wrong, oh, I've got it wrong. And I think all of that in the mix just means that as mums it can be really hard to admit to ourselves and to somebody else that we're struggling. And often as well, as mums, we're very busy and we don't always have time to think about me, because particularly in those first few weeks and months, our attention is rightly focused at times on the little one, and even getting time to think about feeding ourselves, dressing ourselves, brushing our hair can be hard. And actually I would hear from many mums as well that they would worry about maybe their baby being taken away if they share that they're struggling. And I just really want to say that is not the case. That is not what a midwife or a health visitor or GP is there for. They're there to help and support the mum. But that's definitely a fear that I would hear from lots of mums when they worry about saying that they struggle, or worrying about what people will think about them as a mum or a person.
So, Lindsay, can you tell me what actually causes maternal mental health issues?
I think it's fair to say we don't know that there is one particular cause for it, and we can't be exactly sure of why some mums struggle and maybe others don't. And perhaps sometimes it can be those who have a history of mental health issues, but for many this is the first time they struggle when they become a mum or a parent. It might be, as we've said, because of issues with the birth or with pregnancy. It could be because of life changes or new expectations. But I think the really important thing to say is there is no blame and no shame if you do struggle, because research shows that about 15 to 20% of mums struggle and about 10% of dads. So actually it's quite common
Yeah.
And so while we don't know the cause of it, we know that many people do struggle. And actually, if you do, it's not your fault. It's not something you've done wrong. The most important thing is that you get help and support to get better.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And I think being able to share your story with people will hopefully encourage others to come forward and share their story, and also know that it's not their fault.
Absolutely.
It's not their fault. So, Lindsay, can you tell me about what help is available for parents? Obviously, we've got Parentline. Any mother or any parent can call for help, advice or guidance. So what other options would there be?
Well, I think it depends, as we've talked about it, how it is a mum is feeling. But so there's a lot of online help nowadays, actually, in online support groups, which actually work very well in the first instance for mums, because you can join those and be a bit anonymous.
Yeah.
And you can kind of look and see what somebody else is sharing, and you don't have to share anything of your own until you're ready. And sometimes just hearing some of your own thoughts reflected back to you by another person is really encouraging, really helpful, and it's kind of that light bulb. It's not just me.
Yes, yeah.
So I think those are really good. We also have a number, particularly in the last years, of in-person support groups for parents, particularly here in Northern Ireland, that are all over the country. And those are great as well, because again, it's going along. You don't have to say anything, but you can. It's even just being able to see other people parent and realise, I'm not the only one who feels like that, or I'm not the only one who does that, or your baby does that too, so does mine. So I think those are particularly good. Or even joining something a bit more general, like a baby massage group. So it's not particularly focused on mental health, which again might be something that's harder to go along to, but something where there are other mums and babies about. And I know mums who found just friendship and encouragement in that. And quite often people who run those sorts of groups are well trained in supporting mum's mental health as much as the activity that they're there to run. And then I suppose I would say, for mums who really are struggling, it's really important to talk to somebody. So it's important to talk to either your midwife in those early days, or your health visitor if the health visitor is still visiting, or to go and see a GP or somebody that you trust as a medical professional, because often they can refer for counselling or CBT or some sort of talking therapy. And for some parents it might look like some medication, and that's been my story.
So that would be the treatment options then?
Yes, that would be, those are some of the help, I guess, that's available in the community, and then some of the treatment options that are available. And again, for those treatment options, it would be a healthcare professional who would work that through with mum and make a plan and see what would best suit in that individual needs.
So your journey has been one of that you have gone down the medication route? Yeah,
so I was diagnosed when our little boy was 2, and I had been very ill for those first 2 years, and found myself in a really dark and desperate place. But it was medication that I really needed in the first instance to just help me be able to get back to life again, really. But all of those other things then that I've shared, the online support, the peer support, the connecting in with other mums, those were a really important part of my recovery as well. Finding other people saying the things that I thought I could never share with anybody else, or those thoughts that repeat over in your head, and actually hearing somebody reflect back and say, yeah, me too, just was really encouraging and part of my healing and recovery. So I think there's not one size fits all for help or support or for treatment. It really is based on mum and family situation and what it is that she feels she needs, what it is a healthcare professional might think that she needs. But I suppose the most important thing to do is to ask for help in whatever shape or form it is that's right for you.
That's a lovely term that you used, healing and recovery. Is that something that you're actually on a journey all the time, that you're continually trying to improve your mental health?
Yeah, so I have found that since I was particularly unwell for those first 2 years, I have to look after my mental health in ways that I didn't even think of before. And that has been a learning curve for me, really. To, as you say, this is a journey. It's not a tick, I'm recovered, let's leave that behind. As much and all as I think most of us would love that to be the case, and we love it to be done and dusted, that's just not how it is. And so at the minute I am going through a season where I'm having to take extra care of my mental health, and I've had to make the decision to go back onto medication again, and that hasn't been particularly easy because, like I say, we love to imagine that it's done and dusted and everything's sorted. But actually, as I've done that and I've stepped back and thought about it, I've realised that actually this is life.
Yeah.
And being a parent, being a person, being a human being isn't always easy, and we all go through seasons of difficulty and struggle. And the most important thing in those seasons is to get help and support.
Yeah. I mean, I have seen you share your journey on social media and stuff. And, you know, how do you feel sharing that? You know, which it's a very personal story that...
I suppose up until recently, a lot of what I'd been talking about was very previous.
Yes.
So my little boy is 6 now, and I talk about the season when he was 1 and 2 and when I was pregnant. And so has always been with hindsight almost. And while that in a way has been very hard at times to dip back into it, it's the past. So more recently I have obviously been sharing about the present day, and I found that really hard, and I wasn't expecting it. In fact, as I wrote a few of the posts to share, I had them sitting for a couple of days, and I went to hit publish a number of times and I just couldn't do it, and I walked away. And that was a very new feeling for me because I have been so open. But I think it was because at the minute it's very current. And so it did take quite a lot of courage to hit publish. But honestly, I have been overwhelmed by the responses, the encouragement, the messages of me too, of this has helped me, or just thank you for sharing because I needed to hear it. And it has just reminded me again of the huge power and potential we have as people to reach out to one another, to encourage one another, and actually that you're not alone. There are so many other people at very different ages and stages of life who struggle, but we're all in this together. And so I'm actually really glad that I did, and I'm hoping to continue just over these next few months to share how I'm getting back on my feet. And again, I've met so many new people and more people through this new stage of sharing, which has really encouraged me.
Good. That is fantastic to hear. And I really appreciate you being so open and honest about it in this podcast. Looking at the policy side of things and what government can do, I mean, what have you been involved with, and also what can be done, what more can be done?
So part of the work of Have You Seen That Girl has been campaigning for better services right across the UK, but obviously very much here in Northern Ireland. So we know that 80% of mums and families do not have access to specialist services, and we don't have a mother and baby unit here in Northern Ireland or on the whole island of Ireland. So that means if a mum needs to be an inpatient, she has to be separated from her baby and often ends up on an adult psychiatric ward, which is just not suitable at all.
No.
It's not suitable for mum, it's not suitable for the new little baby to be separated or to come and visit, and it's not suitable for any other siblings or children that mum might have who obviously want to come and visit. And so we have been campaigning for the last number of years to see that change and to see specialist services right across our 5 health trusts and a mother and baby unit implemented here in Northern Ireland. And so part of my role last year was canvassing all of our political parties and asking them to pledge their support to immediate investment and funding for these specialist services. And I'm delighted that last year all of the parties who are now in the executive have signed up to that and have said that they have pledged their support. And so in the coming weeks, myself and a team are meeting with our now health minister, who was one of our signatories on our statement, to ask about how this happens and when this will happen, and just to remind of the immediate need for these specialist services. These services save lives. And the fact that we still don't have them in Northern Ireland, in fact, the fact that 80% of families have no access to them is absolutely shocking. And it's something that needs to change, and needs to change very soon.
And are you concerned, because obviously we've heard a lot from the new executive about funding issues, and there's a huge wish list.
Absolutely.
Are you hopeful that something will be done?
Well, I always try and remain hopeful. And so, yes, we are. I mean, we did a lot of work last year and a significant amount of meetings with each of the parties, and all seemed to genuinely understand the need and the importance of this, and how it's often not just, obviously it is about the mum in that situation, but it has wider implications for baby and family as well. So early intervention and services really do matter and do make a difference for the whole of society. So we are hopeful. As I say, we do have that pledge and that promise from all of the parties in the executive, and that's something that I personally, and I know we as a team, will not be letting go of anytime soon. And so we do continue to lobby, and we do continue to hope that we will see change very soon.
I mean, that would be fantastic
Would be.
if you could get, the pledge to become a reality.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Can I ask you, what advice would you give to, fathers or partners so that they could also recognise the symptoms of maternal mental health, especially the early symptoms, and what should they do about it? We've talked about what mums can do with it, about it. So what about dads?
I think one of the most important things is to be educated yourself about maternal mental health and well-being, or parental mental health and well-being. And certainly there has been much more of a drive for that in the antenatal period, with there being much more education around classes and all parents being educated about what it looks like to have good mental health. And so that's really important to know some of those signs and symptoms that we've talked about here this morning. I think it's just for dad or partner to be just having a wee watch out for anything that they might know is particularly out of character, things that mum might say or do that they think, okay, that's not quite right, or that's not quite normal, if that makes sense. And I suppose if they do notice something, to ask the question, how are you? Or I noticed, or are you feeling okay? And when you do ask, I think it's really important to listen. And that seems probably a very silly thing to say, but often mum needs the opportunity to talk, and so what we really do need is somebody to sit back and to listen to where she is, or what she might have to say, or what she might be worried about or fearful of, and to do that with no judgment. And sometimes that can be really hard, actually, because I know, particularly when I was struggling, some of the things I might have shared could have been a bit even shocking, or goodness, but it's how you react, I suppose, in a positive and an affirming and a supportive way, and when something is shared that you maybe weren't quite expecting. And then I would say, don't do it alone. So if you are worried or you are concerned, speak to somebody. So that, as we said, could be midwife, health visitor, GP, a support group, and encourage the mum to get the right treatment and support for her. And sometimes that's practical support. So sometimes that might be saying, do you know what? I'll take the baby out for a walk, or I'll do bath time, go you and sit down and get a cup of tea. Or on the other hand, it might be, actually, I'll put the washing in, I'll make the dinner, go you and sit down and enjoy baby for a while without all the other expectations. Or it might be none of those things. But it is looking at just to see how can you even practically as well as emotionally be there to support mum, because often just everything that needs done is overwhelming in itself.
I know.
And sometimes having a few of those off your plate can just give that little bit of break to get some headspace to even think about how you're feeling or what you might need to help you feel better. And I just would say for dads as well, or partners, if mum isn't very well and if she is struggling, remember to look after yourself too. Because often dads then pick up a lot of the extra strain, particularly if mum is very unwell, and then forget to look after themselves. And then it's nearly a vicious cycle because both are struggling. So ask for support for yourself as well. If you're finding it hard going, you're not expected to do it all alone either.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Lindsay, if there was a mum listening or watching today, and they're finding a real challenge and a real struggle. Obviously, they can phone Parentline,
yes, of course,
and there's the support there. But what would you say to them?
I think the first thing I would say is you're not alone. And I know that probably sounds very cliche, and we say that quite, hashtag you're not alone. but actually you are not alone. When I was struggling, I used to imagine that I was the only one who felt this way, and that it was somehow my fault and I was to blame, and that nobody else would understand, and I was such an awful person for how I was feeling or reacting. And actually the reality is that many other mums like me struggle. So if you are struggling, you're not the only one who's struggling. You're not alone, and it's not your fault, and you're not to blame. But also that there is help and support. You know, you don't have to do it alone. That might be a family member or friend in the first instance you get help and support from. It might be from a healthcare professional. It could be from a charity. It could be from a group, or it could be medication. But just that reassurance that actually you're not alone and you don't have to go it alone. There are people and things there that can help you. But also, really importantly, there is hope. This is a season, and you can recover. Life can be good again. I know particularly for me, I used to just imagine this is how life was always going to be. And I just had to suck it up and get on with it. And literally life was to be endured every day. It was just about survival. I didn't think I would ever get to the point where life could be good and life could be enjoyed, where I could thrive doing things and thrive as a family. But there is hope, and I have recovered from that really desperately awful season. And yes, I'm looking after my mental health and well-being now. But actually, for any mum who's sitting there thinking this is never going to go away or it's never going to get better, I want to encourage you that it can and it will. There is hope. This is a season, and you can get help.
That is some fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you coming in to discuss this issue, but also for sharing your own journey as well.
Oh, no. Thank you for having me.